Hey students, in the last lesson you were introduced to the steps of the infer strategy. Let's do a quick review. So what does it mean to infer? It means that we need to think about or work with and develop those ideas about what we're reading, taking some of our knowledge and applying it to what we see in a text. Okay, so there are two major types of questions. Remember, there's two major types, and there is a factual question and a think and seek question. So there are also three types of think and seek questions, and for the think and seek questions, you're going to have, I'm kind of stuck, I'm trying to think. Okay, big picture, predicting, and clarifying. So there's three types of think and seek questions, but you do need to know there's two types of overall questions: factual questions and think and seek questions. Okay, then let's talk about the inferencing steps. So when we infer, we need to interact with the passage and the questions, or interact with the questions and the passage. The second step, note what we know. F, find the clues. E, in fourth step, explore any supporting details. And lastly, we're going to return to the question. Make sure that you know that any one of these are interchangeable. So if you were able to find something in the title that gave you the information, you could note what you know and answer the question, go back and find any clues and extra supporting details, and then return back to the question. So you don't, you could have found a clue in the title and then return to the question, then noted what you know. So they're interchangeable, but just know that we need to know the steps that we INFER with every question that we are given with a passage. So make sure you are familiar with these steps, because we're going to review them all the time, and I'm going to ask you to be able to state them from memory. Okay. So as we reviewed, there are two major types of questions that you will be asked to answer: factual question and think and seek questions. You have already learned about the steps of the infer strategy. Today you are going to learn how to use the steps to answer factual questions. So your job is to listen carefully. Go ahead and take notes on your inference strategy lesson 2 notes sheet, and participate with the discussion in class, or if you're watching the video, you're going to be participating in your head and interacting with the information. Okay, so later you're going to be completing at least one activity to practice the coding and answering the factual questions. You're going to be doing them with the teacher or as a class, so make sure you listen to the video all the way through. Okay, so here we have the idea that we have factual questions. Let's go ahead and write that down so we can see what it looks like. Factual questions. Okay, so who can tell me what a fact is? Notice how it's in the beginning, a fact. Alright, so it is something that is true and is real. You can't, it just is a fact. You can't adjust it. So a fact is something that is true or real. It is something that has actually occurred, or something that the author has told you about. So what do you think a factual question would be then? As we think about it, let's go back to our notes and make sure that we have them filled in with information. I'm going to zoom in so you can see the notes page better. Okay, so a fact, or there are two major types of questions you'll be asked to answer. They are factual and think and seek. Questions. Okay, so remember, a fact is something that is true or real. Make sure you have both of them down there. Okay, so based on the thinking of something being true or real, A factual question. Let's see if we can find our information here. I think I found it. So factual questions. They are going to require you to find a fact within the information that you have read or will read. The answer to a factual question is right there in the passage, and you can find it in the passage if you look for it. So let's go back to our notes. A factual question will have an answer that is right there in the passage. Okay, can you see that on the note card? So requiring finding a fact in the information that you have read. That's the factual question. So that means that the answer is going to be right there in the passage. Okay, so let's take a look at some possible factual question examples. So we have, what color is the boy's hair? What is the name of the girl's best friend? How many years have the people lived in their house? Where is the train going? Who is on the boat with the lady? When did the man arrive? Which dog bit the child? Those questions would probably be something that the author would give you in the passage. So let's just note really quickly of what a factual question may begin with, and we'll go ahead and note them. So if I'm looking at the beginning of my sentences here, whoops, see if you can see it. Okay, so I am looking for words that would be like who. Notice how I have who. I would also find what. I would also be able to find where. Who, what, where. I would also be able to find when. And then the last thing that I would probably be able to find is how. Now be careful, these are clues that you're going to find, but you need to be able to read and interact with the passage and the questions. If you're not interacting, you will get stuck and not realize that this may not be a factual question, because just because it begins with these words does not mean it's guaranteed a factual question. Okay, so, however, these are just examples. Factual questions will always ask for something that is, again, right there in the passage. We need to be able to find it in the passage. Okay, so you can usually recognize a factual question if certain keywords are used in the question. These keywords include who, what, when, where, and how. When you see one of these keywords, you might even underline it to help you remember what you are looking for. However, you have to be careful. After seeing one of these words, check that the question is about something that has happened in the past versus something that will happen in the future. A factual question is about something that has happened in the passage and is described right there in the passage. A predicting question, on the other hand, is about something that will happen in the future. Its answer may or may not be described in the passage. We'll talk more about predicting questions in a couple lessons. Okay, so remember that good readers attend to facts as they read. If you notice that the character has blonde hair, how would that help you? Well, think about blonde hair. Think about a friend that has a blonde hair. You should be able to imagine, get some sort of picture in your head of what that would be like. You would be able to relate that information of blonde hair to something that you know. What about if I said long blonde hair? Now suddenly you may picture a girl, or even there are some boys that with longer hair than what a boy would traditionally wear. So, but right away, you should be able to see that in your head because it is something that is related to what you would know. Okay, so you're going to be able to use the strategies like visual imagery strategy better, or you'll be able to relate what you're reading to something you already know. If you use your strategies well, you'll understand and remember more. You'll be an active reader who learns a lot and gets good grades on tests because you're actively learning. You're interacting with the information. Okay, so let's take a look at this last part. Okay, so when you answer a factual question, you will answer it in your head as a complete statement. That means that you have to have a subject and a verb. Most important, though, you must make sure that the answer you choose is the same as or directly related to the information in the passage. That means if the question asks you how old a person is, you will find the sentence in the passage that tells you how old the person is. If the passage says that the person is 5 years old, you will choose the answer that says the person is 5 years old. Or maybe it will say the person is between the ages of 4 and 6. Again, that information tells you directly that the number between 4 and 4 and 6 is 5. So then you would know they're 5 years old. So why would you not choose an answer that the person says that the person is 10? Well, for one, yes, the answer is wrong, but there's no information in the passage for you to support that information. So always choose an answer that is directly related to the information in the passage and that answers the question accurately. So when you read a factual question, be sure to attend to and underline keywords in the question to help you know what clues to look for while you're reading. For example, if the question asks you what color is Samuel's hair, what keyword might you underline in the question? Well, if I go back to here, I would know that what is a key word. So I would underline what, and maybe Samuel's hair, so that I remember I'm looking for Samuel's hair. So let's go back to our notes and see if we can fill anything more in that we've covered. So we know that we're going to look for something that's right there in the passage. And if we're attending to facts in the passage, it will help you be a better reader. So I'm looking to add facts. When you answer a factual question, you have to make sure that the answer you choose is the same as or directly related to the information. Directly related. Remember that if I said the girl was in kindergarten and her friends were ages 4 and 6, I still would not choose a 10-year-old because kindergartners are usually 4 or 5 years old and her friends are between 4 and 6. So I would probably choose something that said 5 because it would be a fact. The information tells me that's directly related to her age tells me that she would be number 5. If they're going to ask me a question about her age, I would choose the most likely candidate based on the directly related information. Or if she simply said the girl was in kindergarten and she was 5 years old, it would be the same as the information in the passage. Okay, so we also talked about the information. When you read a factual question, be sure to attend to it's the key words in the question. Remember we talked about underlining? So we're looking for key words like who, what, where, when, and how. So we need key words in the question so that you know what clues to look for when you're reading. Again, after you read a factual question, you need to look for clues, I'm going to say keywords and clues that are in the passage to help you answer correctly. So the first thing we're going to look for is keywords in the factual question, and then we're going to look for the same keywords and clues in the passage to help you answer correctly. So that concludes our first page. Make sure you have everything filled out. If you need to go back and stop the video so you can get those entered, be sure to do that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more. So you're going to find clue words in the passage. What if the question asks you, what is Brittany's age? What key words might you underline in the question? Well, again, we're going back to those key words, and I would probably look for what, and then what is it about it I'm looking for? Well, I'm looking for Brittany's age. So I would underline Brittany's age. Now, what clue words could I find in the passage? Well, I could find anything that is directly related. I would find words like Brittany, years, or possibly numbers like 15, 16, 17, whatever that is directly related. Okay, so let's go over how to use the infer steps with the factual questions. So I'm going to put these infer steps back up here. So for the first step, you will read the question and then think about them. Be sure to read the whole question. Why do you suppose we talked about reading the whole question first? Right, well, it's to remember to underline key words in the questions that can help you look for clues in the passage. For the note step, note what you know, you will decide what kind of question it is, and you will write a code letter next to the question. So what code letter did we decide is for factual question? Well, factual begins with an F, so our code letter is F. Okay, you also need to think about what the topic in the question. You may already know the answer and be able to answer it right away. For example, the question might ask you about the Civil War. Well, if you've just studied the Civil War in history class, you might know the answer. More likely, though, you won't know the answer, so thinking about the keywords in the question will help you as you look for clues. For the find the clues step you read in the passage, as you read, be sure to find the keywords in the factual question to keep the keywords in the factual question in your mind, and to use other strategies you know to help you understand what you are reading. Also look for clues specifically related to the question and the possible answers. These clues might be words in the passage that match up with words in an answer. For example, if the question asks for the name of the girl's mother, what clue word might you look for? Well, I'm not only going to look for the girl's name, but I'm also going to look for a keyword like mother or mom that would be directly related in the passage. Then you would go ahead and underline that in the passage to help you remember where you got the clue. But remember to read the whole passage. Find all the clue words related to all the questions and underline all the clues before you answer any of the questions. You should have at least one underlined per question. That is, there are 5 questions, so you need to have at least 5 underlines. In the Explorer step, explore any supporting details, you will be sure to read the whole passage and look for other clues in the passage that will support your answer or that prove that your first answer you have chosen is wrong. Again, you're going to underline each clue. Why is reading the whole passage and finding all the clues important? Well, because you might find a later clue that gives you the answer while the earlier clue provided the wrong answer. So you don't want to stop thinking about the questions just because you found some supporting details. So please be careful. Once you think you have a good answer for the question, go back to the question and look for the answers you can choose. Each answer will be a fact. So which would you choose? Well, it needs to be the answer that best matches the fact in the passage. Okay, so once you return to the questions, you need to make sure that you are matching those up. Okay, remember to be flexible in how you use the steps of the strategy. You might find that you have to go back and forth between the passage and the question several times to check for support before you can choose a good answer for a question. For example, the answer might not use the same exact words as the passage. It might be in parentheses or paraphrased, or in a parentheses to explain something in the words in the passage. In such a case, go back to the passage and make sure that the words may be paraphrased in that way. you want to make sure that they are directly related to all the clues. Okay, so now that you learned the infer strategies, let's go back to our notes page, flip it over. Let's go back and put in the steps to the inference strategy are. This is just another review to make sure that we know them. I means we are going to interact with the questions and the passage. You need to interact with both. Then you are going to note what you know. Then you're going to find the clues. Then interact, note, find, explore. Explore any supporting details. Now, the supporting details go with the questions, so you may be able to find more information than just one statement that helps you answer the questions. And then always, always return to the question. Make sure that you know those. Okay. So going back for a review, the first step is to interact with the passage and the questions. The second step is to note what you know. The third step is to find the clues. The fourth step is explore any supporting details, and then return to the questions. Or return to the question. So INFER, infer, and those are the steps that go with them. It's important you start thinking about those each and every time you interact with a passage and questions that will be answered with those. Okay, so for the notes section, you've completed what you need to have in order to complete the note sheet. I am doing an independent lesson with you and using the infer strategy to go over your information. So you are actually going to be given a passage and questions that go with it, and I'm going to give you a quick mini lesson on how to do that before you do some independent. So when you come to me for our independent practice on the passage, you need to bring 2 sheets with you. The Lesson 2 Passage 1 sheet, and you also need to bring your notes. If your notes are filled out completely incorrectly, I will give you a grade for them right then and there. So make sure you bring both of those with you before you come see me. That's important. This is your end of the video instructions, so make sure you followed it all the way through. I'll see you in a little bit.